Ja, jag ser dig på video. I'm starting the meeting now.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, Fredrik, we can hear you. Thanks for joining, everyone. We have people that are starting to join the meeting. Still a couple of minutes before we'll get started, but thanks for joining, everyone.
Or maybe people have. Yeah, we just want to make a quick test with sharing our camera.
Sure.
Yep. That's working.
You see us okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep. Looks good. See you from your right side, Fredrik. So thanks for joining, everyone. So we have still people joining, so we will start in a minute or two. Please hold on. So thank you for joining, everyone. Thanks for joining, everyone, to the SOC Open House webinar. We're just waiting one more minute or so before we get started. Okay, we are at the top of the hour, even few minutes about 10 o'clock. So let's get started. I'm Marcus Silver. I'm a marketing manager here at NTT Security Holdings, and I'm glad to that we have a lot of participants that are joining to this SOC Open House webinar. And the webinar will be done by Fredrik Olsson, who is our sales manager here in the Nordics, and together with our pre-sale and SOC analysts in this and SOC manager in the SOC. But I will hand over the word to Fredrik, so you can introduce yourself and NTT Security Holding.
Thank you very much, Marcus. As Marcus said, I'm Fredrik Olsson, and I'm responsible for sales for NTT Security Holdings, and I'm going to be your host on this session. But before I'm starting hosting it, I will just give you an overview on who we are and what we do, and more about our services. So what do? We detect and respond in our clients' environments. And we are very proud of, as you see, we have a number of 73%, which is the number of our what we initially detected in our clients' environments with our tools and methods developed by NTT Security. And this has been we've been doing for over 20 years of developing this our capabilities. So we are very proud of able to show those in this graph for the last year. So who are NTT Security Holdings? We are part of a larger organization. NTT is a very, very large organization with many employees worldwide. NTT Security Holdings is the security division of the group. And as you can see, we are recognized by different analysts that we are good at what we are doing and recognized for that. And we have been delivering our services for over 20 years now. So it's not a new service from us. It's a well developed for many years. And one of the key aspects of what we are doing this good and our capabilities in detect and respond for our clients is that part of it is that our great visibility into the global internet traffic due to the fact that NTT is a tier one of the largest tier one, would have a lot of visibility in the back end of what's going on throughout the world. So today, in not only me hosting the meeting, and we are, as Marcus said, we are going to get a presentation from Fredrik Westerdahl, who's running the SOC, how we are delivering our services 24/7. And after that, we will hear Donny talking about our threat detection and our unique capabilities of our services. And then last but not least, you will have a live demonstration of an attack showed by Donny and Marcus. But before we're going into that, there is our industry is expert in creating, a lot of acronyms of the services. And before going into deep dive of our Samurai MDR service, it's important that we are just clarifying a bit on what's the difference between an XDR and an MDR. And I always think we all could agree on that XDR is a platform, is a technology that is running beneath the service, and the MDR is actually the service on top of the XDR platform. So I hope we could all agree on that, and this is what you see is the Gartner definition of XDR and MDR. Marcus, you need to time me as well.
Sure, absolutely. And now I'm stopping you, Fredrik, and for anyone else, you can also raise your voice and ask questions. I will leave it open so everyone can activate their own mic if they want to speak up. There are also Q&A, where you can put in questions if you have questions.
Thank you for the clarification, Marcus. So we are today going to talk about Samurai and our services, primarily focusing on our MDR service. But just to highlight that the XDR platform that we've been developed in the last iteration of our services or our platforms is a very much a vendor agnostic platform, a cloud native platform, and that is the technology we are using for our services. But this is nothing new for us. It's nothing that we just started to build a new platform. It's been an evolution within NTT Security Holdings. We have been doing this for, as I said in the beginning, over 20 years now, developed our services. So it's been going through many iterations of the market, how the market has also developed the services to what we all today called an XDR service, whereas MDR service is running on top of the XDR platforms. So, and NTT Security Holdings, we have chosen an open XDR strategy. There is a clear distinction between the open XDR and the native XDR, as you probably know. And the reason for that are many different reasons for it, actually. But for one key of the aspect is to make sure that we are truly delivering a vendor agnostic service. So we are able to use your already invested in your infrastructure that we could use in our services. But also what the industry has been lacking for many years is the black box or the black hole scenario, where MSS has traditionally been served, you know, that we are receiving a lot of different logs or telemetry from clients, but it's been a black box for in many cases. With our service now, we are both increasing the transparency, making sure that you see what we see, but also are taking away the challenges with large IT projects with onboarding. And we will come back to the more about that later on in this presentation. For many years, I've been talking about both collaboration within the industry, but also visibility. And I just mentioned that we are vendor agnostic and we are supporting what clients already invested in. One of the key aspects is that visibility is key for everything. Visibility is key to make sure that we're having a good capability of detect, but also a good capability of respond. And here you can see, I'm not going into all the details about it, but we are covering all different areas to make sure they have good visibility for detection. But one key is also that we are able to detect in the OT environments at the same time with the IT environments, which means that we are able to correlate between the two environments for our services as well. We are delivering our services in two different flavors, if you may. I talked about the XDR in itself, the technology, which is one way of delivering the services where the client is using the application for all own investigation, for all own onboarding, etc., etc. And on top of that, we are delivering our MDR service, which is we are using the SOC in between to make sure that is seamless for you, and we are taking care of all investigations for you. But we are still keeping the transparency, making sure that you could use the application and see what we are doing for your environments. I think it's important to highlight what I'm talking about the application. The application is a draw. Here you have a snapshot of the application, what you could see, and that we are now creating the transparency between us and the client to make sure that they truly understand what's going on in the environment. The application is also being used for very easy onboarding of logs and telemetry to the service, which is for us a fantastic way of making sure that we are creating the transparency, but also the flexibility and the scalability with the onboarding. Just to, as we are primarily focusing on the MDR service today, I probably mentioned most of this, but one of the key aspects is to make sure that we are using our great capabilities of detecting in your environments, but also creating the visibility for you to see what's going on and taking away the black hole. And very much important here is also the response piece, both of making sure that we are taking care and detecting your environment, but we are also able to perform remote isolation in your environment. I'm not planning to go into all this detailed architecture, but I think it's important here to highlight that in the service, on our MDR service, you can see on the top right is the application, and the application is used in the service, even if it's an MDR service. So we are creating the transparency between you and us as delivering the service for you. We are not only delivering the MDR service, but we are also delivering consultancy services very closely associated to the MDR service. And here are some examples of different services we are delivering from our consultancy team. One of them are, of course, incident response. I'm coming back to that in the next slide. We are delivering Samurai onboarding, which is supporting our clients to get seamless onboarding, even if it's very easy to onboard yourself, but it could be good that you get some assistance from NTT Security if you need. We are also delivering data discovery services, which is a way to actually get the full benefit of our MDR services, where we are supporting clients to look into what they really have and what they need to make the good service, the best service ever. We are also preparing our clients with tabletop services to make sure that they are prepared for and know what to do with incidents. It's very easy to say that, you know, if a fire alarm goes off, everyone know what needs to be done. But when we have an IT incident, it's not the same story, and we are helping with that, of course. Incident response, we have it in two different flavors. We have the standard incident response, of course, delivered from our SOC and our analyst, which is containing, you know, what we're detecting and reporting, but also remote actions in the client's environment. But on top of that, you could add incident response retainer from our consultancy team, which is 24/7 on call, and they are also supporting you managing a potential incident. So, Marcus, how am I with time?
You're perfect on time, Fredrik.
I'm perfect on time.
That's
all right.
Absolutely perfect. So if there are no questions, your mics are open for speak up if you want to raise any questions at any time. We will also have a Q&A session in the end. But otherwise, I will leave over the word to Fredrik Westerdahl.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Fredrik, the other Fredrik Westerdahl. I'm Senior Director of MDR here at NTT Security Holding, the pure play security company at the NTT Group. I'm honored to welcome you here to visit our SOC virtually today. We're gonna do this live broadcast webinar to show a little bit about our capabilities. Normally, we do these type of sessions on site here at the Security Operations Center in Gothenburg. But today we're gonna give you a snapshot, at least, of what we normally showing during these SOC open house that we call them when we invite customers and partners to the SOC. We are right now in what we call our demo room, where we have 3 large screens that we are able to utilize to showcase our capabilities. Today you'll see it in the Teams window with some minimized or like a little bit smaller screens, but hopefully you will be able to get the sense and feeling of what we're doing here. So as I said, we're in the demo room, which is right in the heart of the SOC, which we have downstairs from where we are now. You'll see that there are analysts sitting downstairs working, and they will continue to work while we are giving this the demo later on. And they will be fully busy investigating, analyzing alerts, do threat hunt, and try to find incidents that our clients are exposed to in their IT environments. So soon Donnie will come here and give you an insight and try to showcase how our analysts are doing when they are working in the SOC and how they do to continuously try to detect incidents that are happening every day in our clients' environments.
Wait, Frederick, could you please stop sharing your screen? I think we'll show up a bit larger. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. So before we go there, I'll just give my short view of what we do. And as Frederick already talked about, some of you are joining today are probably very well informed about what these type of what the concept of MDR is, but we tend to throw these three-letter acronyms around us in the industry, and MDR is certainly one of those: managed detection and response. It's a service, like Frederick said, and it's a service that we have really been delivering from this SOC for the last 20 years plus. It's quite new as a phenomenon, articulated as or named as managed detection response. It's maybe 5-6 years back when it was first introduced by Gartner, but it's really in the core and the DNA of what we have been doing for many years in our SOC. Doing this service, there are certainly a number of challenges, and one of the challenges is that there is so much data to analyze. The only way we can detect the incidents in this in the cyberspace is that there has to be some kind of digital footprint, and but the problem is that there is so much data. So in order to be able to find this, what we call the needle in the haystack, we need to work efficiently, we need to be smart, and we need to have a good platform that can process all these large amount of data volumes that are flooding in every day. And that is the XDR platform that we are using. Frederick also showed this slide, and he mentioned the application. I would like to focus on another part of this picture, and that is what you see on top as well, the MDR SOC. So the MDR SOC is something that is we are really proud of, and that is our people. So we think that is something that is extremely important in all this technology and all this large amount of data that we are faced to analyze and go through. That we have people who are suitable of doing this, and really what it's all about making sense of the data and make it understandable and to provide a value, the conclusions that we are able to draw from our harvesting through all this data. And in order to do that, there are a few certain things that we have learned over the years that we have really become convinced that is super important. And we often get the question about what type of people do you have working in your SOC and how are you able to find these people? Because there is a lot of talk about in the industry today that the lack of IT security professionals available. And for sure, it's not a super easy thing, but one thing we've learned and one thing that I would like to highlight that I find super important in all of this is that although basically all people we typically nowadays want them to have some kind of degree within IT security. That's good, but it's still not mandatory to us to have that, because what is more important, we think, is to have the passion for security. We know that in order to be good at something, you need to spend quite a lot of time doing it. That's the same with IT security. So therefore, we as people, we don't do things a lot that we don't like. So that's what I would like to highlight as the common denominator between all the people we have in the SOC is that they have a deep passion for security, and they're also passionate or dedicated to help the society and help our clients to protect their values. Also, when they come here to the SOC, it's a lot about learning in security. We can never stop learning, and that is also important, that you come into an environment where we offer them to work with similar people. So they work with other similar passionate IT security people, and that is really important. And we think that we can always learn from each other. We will always have people who are more experienced, that has higher seniority, but we can still learn from each other. And to have this very open environment where all the analysts collaborate and every day constantly hunt for threats that we know that our clients are exposed to, that is an environment that is very attractive and also very developing for our analysts. And that is also beneficial to our clients because they know that we'll get a very good service from the SOC. I think I'll stop there and hand over to Donny, my colleague, who will come here and take over the remote, and he will give you now an insight into how the SOC analysts work.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Frederick. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. My name's Donny. So I'm coming from a bit of a different perspective. I'm working in a pre-sales role here, but I actually had the honor of spending a number of years working on the front lines here in the SOC before coming over and joining the sales team. So I think for what I would like to highlight in my presentation is I'm going to talk through really the philosophy, the detection and response philosophy of a high-performing SOC, which is what you get with our Samurai MDR service. I think Frederick Olsen in the first presentation did a wonderful job of talking about where we're trying to go with Samurai. So we now have this Samurai Extended Detection and Response platform. In this platform, we are giving you flexibility, scalability, transparency, and a painless onboarding experience, wrapped in some of the absolute best detection and response capabilities that are offered. What we really want to do with that is allow you to be able to consume the managed detection and response service, Samurai MDR as we call it, in a good way, in a nice way that's modern and works very, very well. So for this presentation, what I'm going to talk through is our philosophy a little bit of the Samurai MDR service, the philosophy of the SOC, the people and the culture. I'm going to talk through some of our tools, give kind of a bit of an insight into how we actually work in the SOC, and then we're going to finish with some live hacking because that's always a fun way to finish. So our detection and response strategy. We always begin with you have to understand the problem, right? And this has been a long-held problem within cybersecurity. We see that threat actors, they're continuously innovating, especially as they move towards the cloud. I would say that how modern intrusions actually happen is quite well defined. So if you look at something like the MITRE ATT&CK framework, there's about 330 different tactics, techniques, and procedures. This is how adversaries make initial access into an environment all the way through acting on their objectives. This is quite a well-defined set. But as we're talking about OT, cloud, kind of some of the new areas that threat actors are starting to innovate in, we are seeing some new attack vectors there. Very often in large, complex environments, it's very difficult to get a holistic security view, right? There can be different legacy areas. You may have OT, you may have IT, you may have SAP, for instance. How do you integrate your threat detection telemetry across all of that? These are often very complex multi-vendor environments, right? I hear very often that a medium-sized enterprise can have up to 75 different point solutions in place. How do you stitch together that visibility? Security fatigue and lack of security skills. These are real problems. If you look at a normal network intrusion detection device, something like a next generation firewall, It can spam millions of low fidelity alerts a week just on one section of the network. That is completely unstructured. It is an enormous amount. How do you find where the real threats are? Especially with the lack of security skills. How do you have the right people in place that can actually find that? What we call this is the needle in the haystack. If you think a modern enterprise generates so much data, we know that there is cybersecurity incidents that are happening, right? There is critical level incidents that hit enterprises. How do you find that needle? How do you find the needle in the haystack that you can detect quickly so that you can respond rapidly? Because if you can't detect quickly, what happens?
Donnie, sorry for disrupting you, but I think some of them have lost visibility here on the PowerPoint.
Okay. Is that better?
No.
Yes,
Yes.
that's now I can see it now, Donnie. Thank you.
Okay. Working for everyone?
Yep,
Well
that's good for me as well.
Perfect. So those security challenges, they're real. So what happens when we fail those challenges, when we can't find that needle in the haystack quickly enough? It's impact, right? If we can't respond fast enough, it results in impact. So IBM, they release their cost of data breach report every year. They recently released for 2022. And what we see over the last 5 years is it's increasing continuously. So this last year, it's about 4.35 million US dollars for the average impact of an on-cop breach. So here at NTT Security Holdings, we are extremely niched in what we do. We do advanced detection and response. We detect some of the most sophisticated threats in the world, and we respond to them quickly to mitigate impact. How do we do that? We do that, we offer an end-to-end incident handling capability, we call it, within the Samurai Managed Detection and Response Service. So for anyone that doesn't know, this is the pickerel framework, it's called, from SANS. And this is a model of incident handling, what that looks like in modern cyber defense, right? So we have preparation. That's where you're actually preparing the enterprise environment for good defense, for actually being able to make those quick detections and rapid responses. We have identify and contain. This is the core of what the SOC does here. They're identifying threats in the environment quickly, and they're containing them to mitigate impact. Then we also have eradicate, recover, lessons learned. When threats move fast, it's very important to have a seamless transition to something like an active incident response team so that they can jump into the environment and they can continue to take action rapidly. They can continue to identify, contain, eradicate, recover. What they learn from that when incident response needs to be activated, they take those lessons and they put it back into helping to prepare the environment. What went wrong? What can we continue to get better? Or is the processes that need to be worked on? Within the SOC, the Samurai MDR service, as I said, we focus on identify and contain. But as Frederick highlighted in the initial presentation, we have a small scope of very niched consulting services that we offer, strictly that aligns to this end-to-end incident handling capability. We can help you prepare the environment with Samurai onboarding, get you set up properly with the Samurai XDR application and the Samurai MDR service. Data discovery, our specialized cyber defense consultants, they can come in and they can actually work with you to see the investments you've made already and figure out what telemetry we need to bring into Samurai to maximize and optimize the detection capability. And then of course we have incident response, which is many of them are sitting here with us in the SOC in Gothenburg and have even worked as analysts previously. So we have this ability to have a seamless transition from the people here working on the front lines, detecting threats, to the incident response team when those critical level incidents happen. What is the strategy of a high-performing SOC? So this is a little bit philosophical, but I would say over 22 years of working here, the culture that has been built up, being recognized as one of the absolute best security operations centers in the Nordics, as well as Europe. How does that high-performing SOC work? How do we detect sophisticated threats and respond to them? So there's 6 pillars that can basically come down to that strategy. And number 1 is focusing on an intelligence-driven detection in a vendor-agnostic fashion. So this is actually on the adversary tactics, techniques, and procedures. That is how the adversaries are making initial access, moving through each step of the intrusion until acting on their objectives. As I said, MITRE defines there's about 330 of these different tactics, techniques, and procedures. By focusing on these, it provides a tremendous opportunity for high fidelity detection opportunities when you're doing it in a vendor agnostic way. To do that, you need the right visibility. It used to be, give us all the data. For us with Samurai, we want an optimized mix of telemetry. So a real strategic use, endpoint, network, cloud, OT, if possible, containers now we can look at, so that we can actually get all that right visibility into the hands of the analysts. Because as I'm going to talk through some of the tools that we use, we're looking at that through a single pane of glass. What we mean by that is, as these different telemetry sources are being brought in to the Samurai platform from OT, from IT, from cloud, our vendor agnostic detection engine is running over top of it, and it's generating alerts. These alerts are being brought to our analysts in a single view, so they can see malicious activity that as it's moving across different areas. That adds the different context. It allows them to do rapid validation. Because pillar number 4, rapid response. This is core for us. The analysts that are investigating, validating down there, when they make the determination that this is critical level incident, they need the ability to respond rapidly, to be able to shut that down. And we offer that with remote isolation. Because the quicker you can detect and the more rapid you can respond, the less impact there is. It's only logical. Number 5, we work a lot with intrusion models. So that's the MITRE attack framework, cyber kill chain. So all the analysts here, they come from a very deep cybersecurity background and learn more as they're here at the SOC. They understand how modern intrusions happen at a world-class level. So when we're getting alerts in and they're investigating and they're validating, it's not enough to just get an alert and send an incident report to a client. What they're actually doing is they're contextualizing that. That is the real heart of what we do in the SOC. They're looking for what happened before, what happened after. Is this the only thing that's actually happening? Is there something else happening within the network at the same time? So that we can get all that information to you, so that we can respond quickly. And number 6, this isn't talked about so much in the industry, but Frederick talked about it, and this is really core to our strategy and what we believe in, and we call it the difference maker. And that's manual validation by highly trained security analysts. So we don't operate on a tier system here. We don't have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 level analysts. Everybody that's working here would be considered at the highest level or have the potential to be at that highest level after some training. We take training incredibly seriously. The program for analysts to come in is 3 to 6 months long, where they're actually learning all the core aspects of working within modern detection and response. But we're enterprise partners with Hack the Box. So many of the team, they like to play on the offensive side and bring the insights back from actual hacking into the defensive side. They're also very well known for playing in Splunk's Boss of the SOC. So for anyone that hasn't heard of this, Splunk puts on competitions every year where they take the best security analyst teams from around the world and they let them compete. We compete in these quite often. In Splunk.conf 2021, we sent a team of 4 analysts, and they managed to finish 6th in the world out of almost 500 teams. We played in the Nordics Splunk Boss of the SOC in 2020, And our team finished second out of 45 of the best security operations teams in the Nordics. So for us, that is the real difference maker. These are the people that are investigating and validating the activity that's coming through the managed detection and response service. How do we actually think about detection? So it's one thing to say we take an intelligence-driven approach, but if we have to be more granular, this is the pyramid of pain. This comes from the threat intelligence world. And this is really a paradigm of how we can think about building vendor-agnostic detection. So there's an arrow on the left-hand side there that says the benefit for detection goes up the higher you go up the pyramid. Because there's an arrow on the right-hand side that goes down that says the difficulty to change for a threat actor actually gets easier as you go down. So if you really want to make good detection in a vendor-agnostic way, it's good to focus on the top three. That's the tactics, techniques, and procedures. That's how adversaries actually conduct intrusions, the tools that they use, and artifacts that are left as a result of those techniques and tools. These are very tough to change, challenging, and annoying for threat actors. Now, of course, it's still very important to have basic tactical threat intelligence covered. That's things like domain names, IP addresses that adversaries are conducting intrusions from, adversary infrastructure, as we call it. This is simple and easy for them to change. But one thing I can say, these become very, very good when adversaries don't know that you know. And I'll talk about that a bit on the next slide. Where do we get threat intelligence? So I would claim that NTT is truly one of the world's powerhouses of threat intelligence. And we get our capability from a number of different sources. We have our global security operations centers, such as the one in Gothenburg here, but we also have others. And where we have the honor of protecting clients on the front lines, investigating, validating incidents, when validated incidents are happening in real time, that tactical threat intelligence is being brought back into our detection capability from those other incidents for the benefit of all our clients. As was highlighted by Frederick in the initial presentation, NTT has one of the world's largest tier 1 backbones, top 3 in the world. From that, we have visibility into about 40% of the world's internet traffic. So our specialized research and development team here, they've actually created custom graph algorithms for doing link analysis on something called sample net flow data. That sounds really fancy, but what it basically does is it allows us to track and actually map adversary infrastructure. So when an adversary sets up a new command and control server, for instance, if you take a large cybercrime group, like TrickBot, for instance, when they create a new C2 server, they'll actually usually have multiple layers of other servers where the botnet master, we say, is actually routing traffic through to control that C2 server. What we can do with our capability is we can actually map that. We can see the different layers that they're actually going through, and we can start to peel it away like an onion. And we feed all that tactical threat intelligence back into our detection capability. We have phenomenal threat researchers working here, put out some really amazing blogs from our colleagues in Japan, as well here in Sweden. And lastly, our Global Threat Intelligence Center. We have a number of contributing partners, some other powerhouses of threat intelligence worldwide, the EC3 Europol Cybercrime Center, US Department of Homeland Security, Cyber Threat Alliance, and so on. So all of this combined allows us to really excel from a threat intelligence perspective when it comes to detection. So with Samurai, we say detection, detection, detection. How do we actually get those good detections? So there's 3 different ways. We have something called our real-time detection engine. This is developed here at NTT. This is fully integrated with our tactical threat intelligence ability, 100% vendor agnostic, and it has some advanced capabilities developed by our R&D team, including things such as behavioral modeling, kill chain modeling, supervised machine learning, and some of the latest threat research from doing PCAP analysis, for instance, malicious PCAP analysis. that really allows us to cut through the noise and find real security incidents happening in real time. We have something called the Samurai Hunting Engine. This is a rules engine that runs retroactively. It's based on the Sigma project, but it's been customized by us with additional detection capabilities for working in Azure Data Explorer. This allows the SOC here the ability to push out new detections very, very quickly. So when the next log4j happens, for instance, in less than 5 minutes, we can create new detection rules and push that out for the benefit of all our clients. Lastly, vendor alerting. As one of our core philosophies of Samurai, being an open XDR, is to make use of the investments that you've already made in security devices. This is core to what we do. So it's only natural that we bring in those detection capabilities as well. If you have invested in something like Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Plan 2, we will take those vendor alerts as well into the platform and use them for analysis. Along with that, we will bring in evidence data. As I'll go through some of the SOC tools, you'll see what that looks like. So for us, this is really a strategy that delivers proven results. 73% of all validated incidents in the last year have been detected initially with tools and methods developed by NTT. When it comes down to quick detection, that's a number that we're incredibly proud of, because the quicker you can detect, the more rapid you can respond, the less impact there is. All right. So that's kind of the philosophy of how we work as a high-performing SOC, how the Samurai MDR service thinks. I'll talk through, I'll give a very quick overview, some of the tools that we use, some of the core tooling. So we have something called our security analyst workbench. All of these tools have been built by ourselves. So as said, we've been doing this for 22 years. There was a time there was no real vendors. There was nobody creating things that could be used by other MDR services. So we have this long history of having to build everything ourselves for the purposes of what we're actually doing here. So we have two main tools that our analysts use for actually looking at alerts. This is Inspector and Meta, we call it. Inspector is our single pane of glass. This is where the alerts are coming in. Meta will usually have these 1 on 2 screens side by side. Meta is where we get all the evidence data that is attached to an alert. This is where we have added further context from our threat intelligence, where we've actually pulled in evidence data, stuff like PCAP data, EDR reports, sandbox analysis reports, and so on. Then we have our own malware lab. So over the years, we've created an absolutely amazing malware lab. So all the analysts have access to a Windows host and a Linux host in the malware lab, set up with all tooling they need for doing things like forensics, reverse engineering if needed. They do traffic replication. So when we're seeing what looks like malicious traffic, they're able to actually go in and replicate it, see what's happening. They can interact with adversary infrastructure in a very safe way when we're seeing things like phishing sites and so on. That comes down to the core of what we're doing is validation in the SOC. As said, when alerts are coming in, we're not just going to write a security incident report and send it to you. The core value of the service that we offer is validation. We actually investigate and see, is this a real security incident? We don't cry wolf to our customers. When we send an incident report, it's because there is a real security incident that needs to be actioned. For actually doing analysis, log analysis, we have a specialized tool called Memer. This is a front end for Azure Data Explorer that we've built ourselves. And then we have our detection lab, which I'm going to be able to go through a little bit as we do the live hacking. Within the detection lab, we have a number of different vendors set up, different next generation firewalls, for instance, different EDR products, proxies, and so on, so that we can actually play around. When there's a new exploit released, for instance, the analysts, they can go in there and they can actually try the exploit. They can see, what do the different vendor detections look like? Our own detection engines are also running in there, so we can see, where do we have coverage versus other vendors. So we can continuously stay at the top in terms of detection capability. So that was kind of an intro. Everyone ready for some live hacking?
Great, Donny. Thanks.
So I'll just go through a little bit quickly. It is an interesting way to try to do this through a webinar, since we have multiple different screens that we need to be able to show. So I'm going to try to do this in the best way so that you can get a bit of a view of an analyst feeling for what it feels like when alerts are starting to come in. So what we've created is a hacking scenario. This is actually based on a real intrusion set of a threat actor that we track called Ent11. This is a campaign that they were running in 2019. And we're just going to emulate that and try it out against a configuration. So we're going to set up our cyber threat sensor. This is a sensor, a network traffic analyzer that's actually been created here at NTT. And that's doing passive analysis of network traffic coming through and detecting threats. We'll set up on the victim host Carbon Black EDR. And then we also have a FortiGate next-gen firewall watching the traffic as well, just to kind of get a bit of an understanding of what the detection can look like with a pretty basic configuration. So the attack overview, we're going to start with initial access through an email, all the way through to establishing long-term persistence using a legitimate remote access software. What do you say, Marcus? I should say my colleague Marcus is here, so he's going to be doing the hacking while I talk.
Good.
We ready?
Yep.
Yep. So as I was talking through the tooling, here is Inspector and Meta. This is the two main tools used for alert management by the SOC, by the analysts as they're working. So we have Inspector in the background there, and we have Meta in the foreground. So Meta shows the evidence data, and Inspector shows the different alerts. You can see the alerts that are highlighted in orange. That is from our own detection capability here at NTT. So that's from the detection that's running over top of the telemetry that's coming into the platform. So everything begins with an email. Here at the SOC, that's just the way it is. I would say that over 50% of initial access that we see is through spear phishing, through mail. So here we've just had a bit of fun. We've set up a mail. We're claiming to the victim that he needs to update Windows Defender, that this update requires your immediate attention. And we wrote some malware just to have a little bit of fun. So I think Bob is going to click the email. And there we can see the email has come up, and we're going to save the file. If we open up Inspector, we've set a separate tab here, and we can see just like that, 3 alerts have already come through from our own detection capability on the traffic. As soon as the email link was clicked, it was picked up by our detection engine within half a second. I should say on the left-hand side of the screen, you can actually see the command and control server that we've set up here for this live hacking demo. This is Coatic, a well-known C2 server post-exploitation framework. So I think as we go through the intrusion, we're going to go ahead and we're going to execute the file. See, it was set. And now if you see in the C2 server there on the left-hand side, we actually get a callback. So just by clicking a link and clicking through one warning, we've already got command and control over the victim host. You know, these warnings, they are coming more and more. But what we see here at the SOC is, you know, some users, they just have a bad day and they click through, and threat actors are quite advanced in the lures that they're using, where it's actually quite believable. And that is why spear phishing is still the #1 initial access method. So we've established initial access, and we've gotten command and control over the victim host. One of the first things that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to escalate our privileges. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to use something called a UAC bypass. If we look in Inspector, we can see that we've already gotten through 7 alerts now have started coming in, where 5 of those are from our own detection capability. So we're going to run the UAC bypass, and we're going to get a call back. So if you can see on the C2 server, there's a little asterisk there beside the new zombie 1. That means that we have gotten something called a high integrity session. We have elevated our privileges, and now we have the ability to do more on the victim host. So we actually now have 2 different C2 channels running. We have a low integrity C2 channel, and we have a high integrity C2 channel, it's called. So we've elevated our privileges. Next, we're going to want to establish persistence. So how modern intrusions happen is quite well defined. The steps that adversaries need to take is a well-defined process. Within that well-defined process comes the capability, when you have that understanding and you do research on it, to create excellent detection opportunities. So here, we're going to set up persistence. We can see that we're actually calling the drop file Windows Defender Update. So Coatic as a command and control server is quite advanced, but then you see more sophisticated adversaries. They'll use things such as masquerading, this is called, where they're calling malicious files by very legitimate sounding names. So the way Coatic works with setting these up is the hash of this file is always going to be unique because it uses the timestamp in it. If an analyst were to see perhaps an alert coming for this malicious file, first thing they would normally do is they would go and check virus total. In virus total, they would see there's 0 reputation for that hash. Very often, when you would see that, things like different automated security devices and more junior analysts with a legitimate sounding name, it's going to be tough to continue investigation. What our analysts would do is they would actually bring that malicious file into our malware lab, and they would tear it apart. They would actually go through it to validate, is this malicious? So we can see that we've established persistence. So I think now, just to prove that we have command and control, we're going to have a little bit of fun on the victim host. I don't think that a sophisticated threat actor would do this, but for the purposes of a webinar, it's good to have a little bit of fun, I think. We can see that a number of alerts are still coming through. So we have 19 alerts that have come through. And now the threat actor has changed the background on the screen for a little bit of fun. You can see that the system has been hacked. Like all classical hacker movies, I think it would be good if we pop Notepad as well, which we've done from the command and control server. So just like that, we've taken full control of this machine. We've established persistence with a high integrity user. Things left to do, I think we would want to do some credential access using something like Mimikatz. We're going to want to look if there's any sensitive information, and then establish long-term persistence. So we will go through and we will actually use Mimikatz now to do something called credential access to actually scrape the LSAS process. See if we can get back some plain text credentials. We can see on the C2 server, we're running Mimikatz now on the victim host. This usually takes about 5 to 10 seconds. There we can see. We didn't get back any plain text credentials, but we got, if you can see at the top there, NTLM hash. So this is almost as good as getting plain text credentials anyway, because within a Windows environment, you would actually be able to use the NTLM hash to authenticate if you wanted to authenticate as Bob, which would allow for lateral movement. So I think next, as a threat actor, we would want to go through, see if there's any sensitive information. We can see now that 26 alerts have been triggered in the analyst view there. We can see many of the initial alerts coming through were all from our own detection engine, but now we can also see that there is some additional alerts coming through, for instance, for the Carbon Black. So EDR is phenomenal, right? Many EDR vendors, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, on and on. phenomenal products. But one thing to keep in mind with cloud-based EDRs is that they can be a bit slow. So we see on average it takes about 10 to 15 minutes for an alert to actually fully populate from an EDR. That's why it's so important to have such a good mix of things such as network and EDR, so you can really get that quick detection. Here at the SOC, since we are working in real time, as alerts are coming in, we're beginning the investigation. So for us, when the EDR comes, it can add that really deep extra investigation capability, but we're usually quite well into it already from more of the network-based detection coming from our own detection capability. So we can see we're going to search now on the command on the C2 server. We're looking for anything that has secret or confidential. And just like that, we can see Bob does have some sensitive information. He has a passwords.txt and some secret 5G plans. So for our threat actor, this is going to be quite interesting. This is a good target that we want to set up long-term persistence. So I think we'll upload something legitimate. We see this quite often with more sophisticated actors, that they will use legitimate software for maintaining long-term persistence in an environment. Here, this threat actor is going to use Screen Connect, also known as ConnectWise, very often used by a number of different threat actors. So what they would often do is they would upload this, and then they would go back through and they would delete any forensics traces of them actually being on the victim host, and just use the legitimate software for maintaining access into the environment. Very often what we see in very large enterprises, different regions can have different software that's running, and very often legitimate binaries can go a long time before they're discovered. So we're uploading and uploaded. So we can see now 29 alerts were generated from that intrusion set that we just ran through. I would say by now, our analysts that are working, they would have begun the investigation. Those initial network-based alerts that were coming in, they would be doing things like traffic replication. They would actually be going out to the command and control server, downloading those malicious binaries, bringing them into the malware lab, and actually ripping them apart to understand, is this a real security incident? Is this binary malicious? They would use things like dynamic sandbox runs to see what do we expect next. Then they would go through and use our tooling such as Memer for doing log analysis to actually understand, do we see the follow-on of that infection chain? Do we see what happened before? Do we see what happened after? So we can contextualize this incident to make sure that when we're going to create our security incident report, that we can give you all that information. So I think we would have a very good understanding that this is a critical level incident with the number of alerts that have been generated and the validation the analyst would have done. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to pick one of the carbon black alerts. There we go. So in Meta, you can see there's multiple different tabs there. So this is the evidence data that we're actually pulling from each of the security devices. We're getting all this in the hands of the analysts so that they can use Inspector and Meta to get that overall view very, very quickly of what is actually happening in relation to that alert. But in the R1 tab, what we allow is for a very quick pivot. So the analyst who is making the validation that understands that this is a critical level incident can simply jump over into carbon black. And they will actually be able to isolate the victim host. So the analysts that are validating and investigating that this is a real security incident in critical level incidents, they can actually shut down the activity quickly and efficiently. So we'll see that it's going to be quarantined. And the way that the agents work with the cloud-based EDRs, as I said, the check-ins can be a little bit slow. So it checks in about once every 60 seconds. So if we're lucky, it'll be pretty fast, but it can take up to 60 seconds for the isolation to take hold. And we should actually see the RDP session there die. So the check-in was quite fast, and we can actually see that we have quarantined, we have isolated the victim host and shut down that activity. The command and control traffic would die, and the adversary would no longer have access to that victim host. Wonderful. So I think what we would do now is we would actually go through our core deliverable from the Samurai MDR service, from our SOC analysts here, is the security incident report. When you subscribe to Samurai Managed Detection Response, you get access to the Samurai XDR application. And in that application, that is your single pane of truth for interacting with the service. So you'll be able to do your own investigations. You can do your own log analysis there if you like. You do all your onboarding as well. And you can also interact with our analysts through the help center. So when we've detected something, we will send you an incident report, and we'll be able to have that communication about that report back and forth between your people and our analysts here at the SOC, who are operating 24/7, 365 days of the year. The security incident report looks like this. So here we can see that this was a critical level incident. We know that it's related to an APT. Here we took an intrusion set from quite a well-known APT known as Muddy Water, who's based out of Iran. We go through, we describe the different information that we found, victims, recommendations, always providing actionable recommendations. Bit of a quick overview, a visual overview. And then for us, the real meat of the incident report is here. This is the incident description. This is where the analysts that are investigating the activity, they will go through and they will give you a factual understanding of what we've observed, what alerts we've observed, the evidence and context around that, what we've been able to discover. We'll give information from our own threat intelligence capability, what we know about the threat actor, for instance, or some of the tooling that they're using. We'll provide you an understanding of the intrusion chain that we've seen, along with the indicators of compromise, so that you can really get a deep understanding. From here, the last part of our managed detection and response service is something that we call threat review meetings. So these are not to do with the incident report specifically, but when you subscribe to the Samurai MDR service, your first year, we always plan a year in advance, you'll get quarterly threat review meetings, we call them. And these are basically incident management meetings where your security team will sit with our analysts on Teams, and we will talk through the incidents that have been reported. And we'll talk through the mitigations, as well as maybe there were some gaps in visibility or anything else around those incidents that we need to do to ensure the incidents are being mitigated and brought to a close. And then the analysts will also work very, very closely with you to help make sure that we're bringing the optimal telemetry into Samurai. Maybe there was an incident reported based on phishing. We can make recommendations for the visibility we should be bringing in to make sure that we can detect quicker in those kinds of cases, and so on. This detection and response improvement list you will have for the entire duration of your subscription with the Samurai MDR service. And it's something that will be continually improved upon so that you can get access to our experts here that will help you to continue to mature your detection and response capability as long as we're your service provider. So I think that's about all for me. We're just about right on time. So I can open it up for, or I'll pass back to Frederick, I think, who will open it up for questions.
Thank you very much, Donny and Marcus and Fredrik, of course. Yeah, we are very interested to get feedback and questions if you have any. And don't be shy. Just raise your hand and pop the question, and we will try to respond.
So while you're thinking on questions, my question to you, Donny, is we saw a lot of alerts coming in, and obviously if the attacker were able to run through all these steps, it become a very severe incident. At what step, what alert would an analyst actually go in and do the blocking of the endpoint?
Well, that's a really great question, Marcus. Thanks. So if we can scroll up I don't know if we can share our screen here again. Yep. Thanks, Marcus. Yep. So if we just sort on time there, and we can see those first 3 alerts that came in very, very quickly in less than half a second. So what the analyst would actually do, we can see in meta there, we get some information we get from our threat intelligence capability that this is related to an APT actor known as Muddy Water. And the other two, we can see that there was a download of a binary. So here we can see that there was a successful download of defenderupdate.hta. We see the status code of 200, which means it was a successful download. The method of get, we can see the user agent and so on. So these first 3 alerts would be highly suspicious to our analysts. They would immediately jump into our malware lab. I think everyone would look to replicate that data to actually be able to download that binary. And when they download that binary, they're going to see very quickly that it is very malicious. I wrote this malware, so I have a good understanding that it is very malicious. And I think all our analysts would be able to see quickly. They would jump into Memer, our log analysis tool, and they would start checking for follow-on. So we can see here that this initial traffic was going to TCP 8060. But if we look down a little bit in Inspector, we can see the actual C2 traffic is going over TCP 9999. So this is a multi-part infection chain, we call it. So the initial malicious binary is coming from one port, and then the subsequent C2 traffic is coming from a second. I would say as soon as we start to see that C2 traffic coming through, this would be ready to isolate.
Thank you.
Is that it? Thanks, Marcus.
Any more questions from the audience? So just raise your hand and we will try to answer. I know it could be tough, also asking questions in these kind of sessions. So I suggest also that you are, of course, able to send questions afterwards to us, and if you have questions. And also, if you would like to learn more about meeting the team around this and getting more insight about our service, also very much welcome to reach out to us and have a conversation. But before we leave today, I also would like to thank the team that presented today. Very much appreciated. But also a little bit of recap of what this session has been all about. We have been talking about our detect and response service, our MDR service, where we highlighted a couple of times our 73% initial detection of our tools and techniques, which is, I would say, is quite impressive. And you got an insight on how we're doing it, and also the importance of highly trained analysts delivering the service for you. We have talked about the changes in the business and the industry of creating transparency and painless onboarding, which is key factors for a successful service, which is changing dramatically since the past. You have also learned a little bit about how an advanced SOC works. You've seen some shots and also some picture from the team there, but also the importance of our people and our highly trained analysts delivering the service, and how important it is for that capability in the service of actually having people working on incident that they do every day, 24/7, all around the year, and that's only what they are doing. We have also talked about the security challenges and how we are addressing it, and with our service. We mentioned and talked about the needle in the haystack challenge, which I think is for everyone, especially with the amount of data going around from cloud environments, OT environments, IT environments, etc., and also to determine actually which is the real thing to work on, and that is our job, to make sure that we are finding the needle in the haystack. We have talked about intelligence-driven detection, which is a key aspect. We talked about the visibility. We have talked about the single pane of glass of the ability to detect and have the ability to overlook both IT, OT, and by all means Kubernetes environments as well in one pane, one view. We talked about NTT Security's holdings, threat intelligence, and the powerhouse we actually are within threat intel, and that is one key contributor to our ability to detect. And then, of course, you saw the live demo from Donny and Marcus as well. And we don't cry wolves. When you hear from us, it's something important for you to address. So that is also important to remember. And I will pick up lastly on Donny's mention that everything starts with an email. And I think you all concur that a lot of things start with an email. So I think that is concluding today's webinar. And I sincerely thank you everyone for joining this session. I hope you got good information about NTT Security Holdings and our service. And I also suggest that, as you didn't have any questions right now, that you reach out to us and continue the discussions offline.
Okay.
With that, I will heading over to Marcus.
So, and I have no other remarks. So I thank you everyone for participating, and thank you the team in the SOC for the excellent presentation. And by this, we are ending the webinar. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.